Welcome to the original International Teacher Podcast with hosts in 4 different time zones, Greg, Darian, Kent, JP, and Hannah, bringing you episodes from around the world about the best kept secret in education. You got it, international teaching. Welcome to the show. Welcome, everybody, to the International Teacher Podcast. I am Greg, the single guy, and today with me is my co-host, JP Min. How you doing, JP?
Hey, good morning from Mexico.
She was just complaining how early it is in Mexico. It's like 7 a.m. It's like 4 o'clock in the Middle East. And Christian, our new guest, our recent guest, he is coming to us from Singapore. What time is it there, Christian?
It's 9 p.m. 9 p.m. here right now.
Past my bedtime. No wonder why I'm tired. Well, welcome, Christian, to our show. We wanted to give you a chance to, let's start off with a little bit of a elevator pitch, how you got into education, international, and we'll let you fly with it from there, okay?
Oh, yeah. All right, thanks. I started in international education about 10 years ago. And before that, I was teaching in the U.S., North Carolina. I know, Greg, you're talking about going back to Florida, I think, correct? So
yeah,
a little bit north of you over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was working there for a couple of years, and I was really looking for a change. Like, I kept kind of switching schools. I kept switching kind of positions, like started off in kindergarten and then went to special education after that. And I was thinking about moving to like Washington, D.C., a different place. And then my father was one who actually suggested like maybe looking into international education because he was also a teacher. And so he was curious if I heard about that before. And I had worked with one other teacher who had worked in Egypt for a little bit of time, but that was kind of the only like foray into international education I'd heard. Because I think what I thought, like a lot of people did, was that international education is just like you're teaching English overseas.
Yeah, in the bush somewhere, teach them English, teach them kids how to speak English.
ESL.
Right? And like there was not really real schools. But then when I like looked into it and realized, wow, I could literally like kind of pick and choose where I want to teach, and like the kind of the world is your oyster. I did sign up with one of the recruiting agencies at that point, Search. I think it was who I did with that one. And then, I got to put my feelers out there, and I got really lucky getting a chance to work at SAS in China and Shanghai. And I remember though at the time thinking like, wow, this is really intense, because I think I did like 7 interviews with them before actually getting the position. And then, went over there, first international thing is going right to Shanghai, China, like kind of getting really thrown in the deep end a little bit, with the international experience, like different language, and like I remember going to the local grocery mart and like being super overwhelmed with everything, and being like, I'm never going to come back here again. And then like that became like the place you went for every grocery trip. And I've like never really looked back since then. I've just been, realized like this is really the place to be if you want to stay in education, in my opinion.
It's so funny
best
you say
kept
that.
Secret in education.
It is the best kept secret. And back in 2001 when I started, because we had talked a little bit about before the show about how we always meet people that have been doing it longer than us. And it was such a secret even back then. There were no books about it, no websites. It just, I found out about it at a cocktail party. Someone just mentioned it. It's funny that your dad mentioned it to you, even though he's a teacher. My parents had no clue. They thought I was just going to go off and die somewhere in Central America. Right? They didn't realize I had explained to them what I was talking about with schools, actually doing what we do in the States, but just doing it in a different country. So that's fascinating. Your dad how did your dad hear about it? Do you remember?
I think he had worked with some other people who went overseas. But I think the big reason he told me about it is because he wanted me to try it out for him.
Got it.
Because
live vicariously.
A year after I was overseas, he went overseas as well.
Wow.
Oh, no kidding.
Okay.
Where did your dad go then?
He ended up in Qatar. But his school was a little different. It was part of the Qatar Foundation, but it was a school for the Qatari cadets only. And so like he did like a 13th year kind of program, or like it was like a community college kind of thing. Yeah. And so he was a librarian for them for 8 years.
And that would have been males only?
Males only. And then he switched over to one that was open to both. Same program. But then he's been trying to like semi-retire in Vietnam this year. but he realized that he would like to still work a little bit more. So now he's going to be in Cambodia again next year.
Wow.
So cool. Get your dad on here and talk about retirement and not letting go and stuff, right?
Yeah,
Make sure you give your dad an
we've
invitation.
never had two generations. Actually, I've never heard of that.
Two generations. Yeah, both you and Christian and your dad. Yeah.
All right, ITP folks, stay tuned for Christian's dad to come on the show.
Oh, definitely can. Yeah. I like what you talked about, like it's the best kept secret, but JP Ben, I'd be curious on your end with this as well. Like, do you still feel it's a secret, or do you feel like it's become more mainstream now and there's lots of people applying?
I still think it's a secret. I mean, the number of people I met in Toronto this February at the ISS fair, and they were all new to this and they had no idea. They were just coming. They'd kind of heard something and they said, well, we thought we'd sign up. Coming from Phoenix, coming from Portland, Oregon, like coming from all over to Toronto, first time in Canada, a lot of them, they were like first time they've seen snow and they didn't know what to expect. So I still think it is like I mention it in Mexico here and nobody knows. Nobody knows what I'm talking about.
I have a theory.
I say like I'm helping teachers go overseas and they're like to teach English. And you see, they always think it must be ESL teaching. What's your theory, Greg?
Here's my theory, Christian. Mark me on my words here. And I've thought this for years. When I went through education in the States to become a teacher, I went to university. The university feeds into the elementary schools and middle schools around that little area in that little district. And the professors sort of prep you and they get you into classrooms in that little area. And all of the graduates, most of the graduates, out of 150 of them, one of us probably left the district. That was me. And it was crazy because it's a machine. We feed the universities have to feed off the schools in the area to make sure that we keep giving teachers to those areas. And if they don't have enough positions, then of course they start looking other places. But rarely, there's a few exceptions. Of course, there's always exceptions of universities that focus on international education and international teaching, right? You and I, what's the one in Canada that was Queens, right? There's there's several of them. And I'm sure in Washington, D.C., there's probably like 5 or 10 or more. But that's just the U.S. that I can speak for. But I think Canada and Ghana and Germany and all the other countries are very similar. You have to build up your own education machine to feed the teachers. So it's not in their best interest really to get us overseas and take us out of that because we are the greatest teachers, the ones that end up leaving, right? Right. Yes.
Toot our own horn.
Someone has to.
Because I've been like talking to some friends who've been applying the past couple of years, like they've talked about like it seems to be more competitive the last few years of like getting into schools, but it could also be like there's less openings as time goes on, or like they're all applying for the same.
Well, there was a theory. Who was I talking to? Maybe or listening to Tie Online or something, Stacey Stevens. But there's a theory that if we're all applying for the top 2% schools, then that's why it feels crowded. It feels competitive because we're all looking for, that the top tier. But there, in fact, like international schools are growing and there's more and more international schools every single year. They're not closing. They're expanding.
My theory goes hand in hand with that too, Christian, is that we're being, when you decide, I think I'm going to go overseas and teach, you're looking at the countries where you'd like to go. It's not like you're going to a district and getting selected and then they just sort of place you in a school within your district. Because now we feel like, oh, I have a choice. I get to choose. And then they choose like the place that a lot of people think it's a vacation. They think I'm going to choose a Caribbean or something. You go to the job fair and you see the lines of people in front of the European schools, in front of the not Mexico. The difficult little tiny schools. So it goes along with the other theory that all of the people are really going for those big numbers. They want the big salary. They want the things that they hear about on our show, the great stories. They don't necessarily realize that you have to put your foot in and work towards that for the most part. Most of us, like myself, had to work your way through. You start at a very hardship school in a developing country. You slowly stay along with it, and years later, you can start looking at the top tier schools. But of course, there's the people that have that perfect opportunity and get to go to Shanghai for their first school, or get to
Yeah.
go to Singapore for their first school. There are first timers that go and get those highly sought after, and the rest of us are waiting in line or waiting to interview, and we get shut down. But that's my theory. I agree. I think that the schools are growing at exponential rate across the world, and those of us that are applying are being a little bit picky, and we should be, right? Because you can't always find that right fit, the right school for you at the time.
Finding the right fit at www.amazon.com.
Yeah. But
second edition
anyway,
out.
Yes. Anyway, I think it's a difficult puzzle for us. So if we look at all of the schools and the people that actually go to those job fairs, you're going to feel that roller coaster of emotion because you want your top pick. But what they don't realize is a lot of people are passing up that super genuine little school in some little island or in the middle of somewhere they've never thought of going, and they pass it up, right?
Speaking of which, Christian, have you been to a job fair? Were you able to get to one to get to Shanghai, or was that those 7 interviews, like all online?
Yes, I've never actually been to a job fair. So I've done 3 international schools, but I've always done it through a recruiting agency, but never at a fair.
That's awesome.
So like the one in Shanghai, it was mostly over the phone. Actually, like they didn't even use Skype. It was like all phone call interviews, which was tricky in its own right. Because like I'm a big person who like I'm really good at interviews because like I can read people's faces and I like adjust my interviews based on how I'm seeing reactions. So on the phone is really, really hard for me because I can't base it
and
off
also
of
with maybe there might be a bit of a lag, so you're like over like CB radio.
And so that one, like that one was like 7 interviews on the phone. And then after I was in Shanghai for 3 years teaching early years there. And then when I went to Hong Kong, that one I was on search and I was kind of headhunted by the principal there, where he reached out to me. But that was also more about being a male for early childhood. Like this is why I've also been able to get into these bigger schools because a lot of the principals like having a male in the early years. So that's been
they want to
absolutely
diversify.
Me too. I'm elementary, but we are amazing teachers. I think that I know that the elementary teachers, the early years teachers I have met that are male, tend to be outstanding. Like Mr. Rogers, super quiet with the kids. I'm always amazed. I'm boisterous, right? But good for you. So you went from Singapore to Hong Kong.
No, Shanghai.
Excuse me, Shanghai
to Hong Kong. Yeah.
And you like the East.
I do. I'm a big fan of Asia in general. Yeah, I don't really have any interest in kind of leaving this kind of this continent.
And how long were you in Hong Kong then?
4 years. So I went. I like to tell people I went to Hong Kong during the protests, and then I stayed all COVID in Hong Kong.
Wow.
Actually, like Hong Kong though for COVID, like wasn't that bad because we never fully closed. There was never like a full lockdown. Like we went in waves. So based on like the numbers, they would like close, they would tighten up or open up depending on like how many numbers there were.
I was in Guangzhou during COVID, and I had a friend that was living in Hong Kong. I was texting, and he was able to hike in mountains and things. And I was like, oh my gosh. He was showing me like his view.
She just wanted to get on the ferry and they wouldn't let her. She's like, I
know. I moved to Guangzhou for that. I thought, I'm near Macau, I'm near Shenzhen, I'm near Zhuhai, and I'm near Hong Kong. Like all these little city
And Christian's in his apartment going, na 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 na.
Yeah. Were you able to get down to beaches and hiking in mountains?
Oh yeah, hiking in mountains, that was great. They closed the beaches. They did close those, but the non-city beaches, like the ones that weren't managed by the park system, those were still open. And so a lot of people went to those instead. But yeah, really loved Hong Kong. It's an amazing city, beautiful. But I was there
from there,
I went to Singapore after that. So I've been here now 3 years. Started off in early years and then this year have switched to grade 4 learning support. So that's been quite a big adjustment for me. Because I was, I think, 15 years as an early years teacher, and now jumping up to grade 4. And like, let me tell you what, the curriculum jump from early years to grade 4, especially in the math, that's been a big challenge for me. But
And
I've had to
9-year-olds
Google
now.
a couple of things. Yeah,
Our
9,
little
10-year
boys
old.
growing up. Our little boys growing up.
So
Big
you're
jump.
in learning support, and
Okay.
this is something that we don't get to talk to a lot of learning support teachers in the show, and just to sort of bring ITP crowd up to speed, especially those that are still back in the States or in Canada and the UK, like still homeland teachers, is that yes, we have special education overseas, but they are often, I mean, a wide range of
A spectrum.
talents. Like they need to be diagnosticians, they need to be pull in, push out kind of flexibility, ESL in some cases, ADHD or autism spectrum. Like you probably run the whole gamut. Is that right, Christian?
Do our school, luckily we have an EAL department, so like they
Okay.
work with the students who are like learning English still or need that extra support. So we don't do anything with those students, but we do have to do quite a bit with, yeah, like quite a wide variety of learning needs. So like you said, like ADHD, autism. There's some other neurodiversities that we're working with, but yeah, there's quite a large amount of students we have to do with that. We do have to do observations and different assessments in the school. Like our school doesn't have a psychologist, so we have to do a lot of like consulting out for different like actual assessments for students or diagnoses and things like that. So like that's always a conversation with parents. But yeah, like depending on what school you're at, it can be drastically different. So like this is the first time I'm not at an American school, because the past two schools I was at, like Shanghai American, Hong Kong International, and even my friends here who work at Singapore American, like they often have like a learning support per grade, more than one, plus a counselor per grade, and they usually have a psychologist. Where like our school, it's just me for the grade 4 team, and like there's only 4 counselors for the whole school, and we don't have an in-house. Actually, we might this year have an in-house psychologist, but I'm not sure if we've always had that. So it can be like, yeah, the learning support at different schools can be very drastic depending on where you are, how big it is. But even then, like what you talk about in terms of like inclusion, like what the school can actually provide for students, and then which students they can accept into the school, like that's also very drastic. Like most schools can handle like mild needs, like students who maybe have some light learning needs or who are behind in some areas, and but can still be in the mainstream classroom like 90 to 95% of the time. Like most international schools, I think, can accept those students, but it's when you start getting more moderate to severe needs, like the pool of available options gets very limited. Some countries have no services in international schools available for that.
Yeah, sometimes the admissions are very strict.
Sometimes in certain countries, the culture is my child doesn't need any help. I don't want to label whether they put them in a closet at home or whether they're accepted to a school. And I'm being realistic. I'm not just joking, because there are countries and families in certain countries that will just say, my child doesn't have any problems. And if the school doesn't accept them, doesn't provide anything for them, and they get kicked out, then they just sort of ignore them. And that's worst case scenario, but it's out there. I think we're lucky to be in schools that have special needs, learning support, language support. One thing I wanted to go back to real quick was I wanted to thank you for differentiating between learning support and language support, because I know that there's kids that don't fall into pigeonholes, and a lot of times learning language, there's language support that's needed too. But special needs to me means like social emotional needs, diagnoses, and actual things like that. I have one question for you. In where you are right now, do they have a lot of opportunities for you to get a diagnosis, for a family to get a diagnosis of their child if they need it?
Right. Yeah, they do. Yeah. So Singapore, I would say, is like one of the more inclusive places overseas, especially in Asia, just because like there are more options in terms of schools here for students. There's a lot of like psychologist centers that are available that families can choose. So like when we recommend a family get like we call them ed psych reports. That's what they use to like diagnose for ADHD or autism. We can give families like 4 to 5 different like centers that can work with the family. So there's a lot of options for them to kind of pick and choose what's best for them. And like there's lots of therapy centers for like occupational therapy or speech therapy. And so there are a lot more options here in Singapore for families with children who have needs.
The reason I asked you is because I had the unfortunate experience. I won't even tell you which school it was at, but I worked in special needs in the special needs department as a teacher, and my immediate supervisor was diagnosing and actually telling parents, like, your kid has autism, your kid has this, your kid has this. I mean, it was so beyond my ethics for a layperson that had no training, did not have any doctoral program, did not have anything to, not even experience to back up what she's talking about. She went online, read a couple articles, and I'm sorry, I'm bristling up a little bit here, right? But that turned me so off to a system that I reached out and told the psychologist. We actually had a psychologist, educational psychologist, that could make diagnoses, arrange for professionals to do it. But boy, I couldn't believe that a teacher was going over that edge. And she thought it was a one person thing, but it opened my eyes and it made me very cautious. And from then on, ever since I met this woman, ever since that experience, I've always guarded the fact that if somebody has a diagnosis, where is it from? Where's the paperwork? Where's the IEP? Where's the official diagnosis? And where can they get one if they don't have it? Before we have a further discussion, that is if I'm part of the discussion, right? So anyway, I know we're getting into some real detailed special needs, but I have a real big heart for this, and it's not the same at all different schools around the countries that we talk about. But I just wanted to share that, and didn't mean to go off too far.
Oh, right, yeah. Because I think like inclusion has been like a buzzword, I think, a lot recently. Like a lot more schools are talking about it, and there's a lot more international schools that like talk about inclusion. Like I think Senya has done a big part of that. Like I know you guys have
Special
interviewed.
Education Needs International Association or something like that.
I think so, and I know you've interviewed, I think, one of the head ladies with Senya before, I believe, and like they've done a great job of like getting the word out more to international schools and like encouraging them to like look at their policies and like really try to be more inclusive, which is great. And like they have a great conference every year that like a lot of international school teachers go to. I think there's still a long way to go with it, because like so when I was living in Hong Kong, like I adopted my son in Hong Kong. And so like I'm a single father overseas. He was very young when I him, like about 6 over time, like as an educator and like someone who's worked in special ed in the States, like I started noticing like some milestones he wasn't meeting and things like that. And so around a year, maybe a year and a half, we got him assessed, and he does have autism, so he is autistic. He is still fairly pre-verbal. So like he can speak some, but he also uses a like AAC device, like a tablet, to communicate as well. So he's still kind of learning that. But like while I was living in Hong Kong, like Hong Kong is also like fairly good for special needs. Like there aren't as many schools, but there's a lot of like therapies and services there for families, which is good. But like I realized that I was going to have to leave when I wanted him to start school, because like the school I was at wouldn't be able to accept him with his
they couldn't
his
support
right. Couldn't support, yes, because he is more moderate needs. And so what I started doing then was I started researching more about like what international schools are there that can support children with moderate to severe needs. And it's actually a fairly small list of schools. Like I think internationally, when I made my list, I found maybe about 45 schools, which sounds really good, like a good number.
No, that doesn't sound.
Oh, in the whole world, that doesn't sound like a lot.
Yeah, it's very few. And like there are I'm sure I've missed some because this is like based on like school websites, like word of mouth.
What a lot of work that was for you.
Wow. I started off with a partner at first who made the beautiful spreadsheet. But then he kind of went away, and I've kept it going, trying to update it. And I've actually partnered with another guy from Senya, who we run like a Facebook page for Senya for teachers who have children with special needs, to kind of try to build a community. Because
what's the name of that page? Let's plug that right while we're hot here.
Okay, now you're gonna put me on spot.
And we're gonna put it in our show.
We'll spotlight it for you. Yeah.
It's called, because it's only for families who have children with needs, but it's Senya Teachers on the Move Internationally with Neurodivergence and Disability. Okay. So it's a very long title. But if they just search Senya Teachers on the Move Internationally, then it usually comes up. On Facebook.
We'll also put a link at the bottom, of course, in our show notes, and highlight that just in case there are people that do need that. That
might not even know that this support exists.
That's what we're here for, and that's why Christian is here. Let's shout it out, right?
So, Christian, you started this list, and then had a couple people sort of helping add to that list, and you then contacted those schools, sort of cold contacted those schools, or sort of kept them in mind while you were doing your job search?
I kept them in mind doing the job search, because the list has, and it's available on the Facebook page for other families to see, but it has the schools, the salary range, usually what specific services they offer. And then it also lists tuition, because a lot of the schools that do offer extra services, the tuition is higher. Due to extra services. So even if you are a teacher, you would have to then top up yourself the extra tuition. So even if you have a spot for your child, most schools offer, you may have to pay another $9,000, $10,000 out of pocket for the extra services at the school. So we try to offer all the information in the list. But yes, as I was interviewing, I kind of knew which schools I wanted to target based off of these services. But that's kind of also where it gets really tricky, because even schools that have more services for higher needs students or for moderate needs students, they may not have space in their programs, because a lot of their programs are very highly subscribed or full, because there is quite a large demand for these spaces. Or a lot of schools also don't necessarily have spaces for teacher students with children, because they get higher tuition,
kind of free.
Right, free, yeah. And so they'd rather have families pay the higher tuition for these spots in the school. And so it does get very tricky as you go, because I've connected with quite a few other families who have children with more moderate to higher needs. And a lot of the schools, when they found that out, then the interviews stopped for those families. And so even though the schools are inclusive, it doesn't necessarily mean they're inclusive for teachers coming in.
Yeah, up to a certain point.
Tricky.
Well, I guess I'm the optimist. At least we can say that schools do have. There's some schools that do have special needs, moderate and upper support out there in the world. So if you're an international teaching couple or a single and you have a special needs child, that don't just give up on international teaching. On the other hand, the reality is it is much more of a debacle. It's much more of a hunt, and your interviews are going to be that much more difficult, which I'm not telling them anything new, I'm sure, except for the fact that there are schools open and available with special needs.
And there's this spreadsheet that they can go and access through Christian's Facebook group. So that's fantastic that you have that resource already created and you're willing to share that.
He's living it too. You're living that. Yeah.
And what we tell people too is we try to tell them, you just need one school. If you can just find the one position, that you can get in, don't be discouraged by the ones that say no. Because the school I'm at now, they can't meet the needs of my son in my school, but they pay tuition for any school in the city. Since they can't meet the needs, they'll pay his schooling somewhere else, which is why I was able to come here and kind of take this role.
So that's even a second tier of schools. It's there's the one tier that will have the support right in the school. Right. And then there's another tier of schools that will say, well, we can't offer the support, but we can pay the tuition for you to send your child to another school. And that's that opens it up as well now.
It does. And I've only found that here. There's 2 or 3 schools here that will do that. And that seems to be like a Singapore only thing that I found so far. The other ones are, like it has to be within their program. But there are some really great ones, like IS Beijing, International School Beijing. They have a really good special needs program. International School of Brussels, like they were one of the first in the world to do it, and so their program is very robust. There's quite a few in Africa as well. International School of Kenya, International School of Uganda. So there are some like big name ones that do have some really robust programs, but again, they're also very full. But if you like are able to get into those, that's really great.
Boy, the timing is difficult, not only to find a position for yourself, but at a school that has the level of needs that you're looking for. Wow, that's a powerful list, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's a Venn diagram of everything has to fit, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And it can be very limiting in terms of like where you can apply. Because like, yeah, there's like I was in Budapest over the holiday break this last time for Christmas, to kind of see those Christmas markets. And I was like, oh, like what a beautiful place this would be to live and to work. But then when you like really dig into it, like for families like mine, like it won't ever really work because like you said, Greg, it's not as welcoming to people with special needs. Like the culture, like they don't have a lot of services in their cities. None of the international schools can really like take children with like extra needs, and so like that kind of rules out that whole country almost.
Most international schools nowadays, if they want to be a name, if they want to draw in the students, no matter what, they need to have at least something. They need to have a baseline, at least for moderate needs. They need to call it learning support. They need to prove that accreditation. I believe there's going to be a level of accreditation that requires certain levels of students that need special attention, that need support, but it's not going to be the autism. It's not going to be the social emotional higher end. It's going to be the very low end of like dyslexia and things like that. Right. Okay. And it's a difficult conversation because it just breaks my heart that is. Although I don't always ask that question at schools because I'm a mainstream teacher, I'm a specialist. I don't have those questions in mind. All right, let's take a moment for a little commercial about how to get in touch with us. You can, of course, find all four of us at the itpexpat.com. That's www.itpexpat.com.
Or you could also find us at email at internationalteacherpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you.
Or if you're into Facebook, we have a new Facebook group at www.facebook.com/groups/ITPexpat, where you can find all kinds of inside information about ITP Expat.
You can also find us on Instagram at International Teacher Podcast. This is our handle.
All right. And thank you, listeners. We have over 100 countries represented by our listeners. And though we're not monetized, we are here for you. And we would like to thank all of you for listening. So let's get back to the show. Can we talk a little bit about what it's like to have an interview with a school about special needs and about learning support? I mean, what are some things that you have to go through that are different internationally than you think maybe in the States?
I think so. Like in the States, like because of the laws we've had in the past, like it's built into public schools. Like you have to have some sort of services for
education is universal. Everybody has to be able to go to school. Okay.
All right. So like you don't even have to ask about that in the interviews, like because there will be a school like in your district, like we're talking about districts that can take your child. Because I taught in like structured pre-K in the States, you know, so like that was for children with like autism who were 3 to 5, you know, so like not every school had our program, but there was a program like between like out of 5 schools, like 2 of the schools would have that program. So there was going to be a spot for your child to go. Where like, yeah, internationally, one, you have to do your research beforehand based on like learning support, like, and some schools don't post it on their website, so it is more tricky to kind of know about it. But yeah, when you're interviewing, like you don't want to come out right away with it because, like I said, a lot of schools will then like be like, okay, well, our interview is finished. But like, so you want to kind of do maybe by like the third interview, you're wanting to ask like, so like for students with needs, like kind of keeping it more open. I mean, not necessarily, again, not about your family specifically, but like trying to gauge of like what level of support can you offer students in your school? Like what are the different programs you offer? Do you have therapies? Like, because some schools offer like occupational therapy or speech therapy in the school and have those therapists in school, so you can ask about that. Like, is it more pushing the classroom? Like, do you have like separate classrooms for children in the learning support department? And like kind of based around these questions, you can kind of gauge like what level of support you can be offered. And then I would say from there, based on how you're feeling, because I think this is a very personal question of like, then like talking about your own child. It's kind of up to you
Absolutely.
when you want to talk about it. Because some people don't bring it up. Like if they feel like the school can offer their child the services they need, they may not bring it up until after they get the job offer. Whereas other people will talk about it before the job offer, because some families are worried they won't get the offer if that happens. And I would say that has happened with me as well, name the school or the country. But I did do, again, another school that had me do 7 interviews for a role. And then when they found out about my son, they were like, thank you, but no thank you.
That's why you said by the third interview, because it's funny, Christian, in the grand scheme of things, most third interviews are the offer interview. I always say to my clients, first interview, depending on who it is, if it's a head of department or if it's the head of school, it will be very different. But then the second interview will be new people. And then the third interview, by the third interview, you're usually getting into sort of that last interview section. But you're saying wait till the third because you've had the experience of 7 interviews, which is crazy. Greg, have you ever had to do 7 interviews for a position?
I've had 5.
Wow.
Right? But I don't, number one, I don't have a special needs child. My complications are so minimal as far as my life and the teaching credentials and stuff. I'm very low impact on a school. They won't even know I'm there as a, needing anything except a great leader.
Yeah, but that's not the interview. Like that doesn't have an effect on the interviews.
What I'm getting at is, for me, it's always been transparency, which is easy for me because I have really no black marks. I have a couple in historically and professionally, but a black mark meaning a tricky situation where you need to read the other person. And I think, Christian, what you were saying is that you need to be able to read that person in the interview and know when the time is right to bring up the more specific and very like deal breakers. There's certain deal breakers that need to come up, and I've always been a fan of transparency. Like, I need to know the first interview if that's a deal breaker. I need to know, because I don't waste my time on the other 3 or 4 interviews post that. Okay. However,
but there's something to be said. Yeah,
there's something to be said for the way Christian has to go about it, because this is very delicate. It has to do with personal family. It has to do with not insulting a program that they already are building or have, I would imagine, Christian, right? When you breach the subject of what they offer, if you're too critical about it, they might turn off just because they think that they might have a different impression of you as a person, even if you're just asking about it. But I can see how it gets tricky. It's not an easy conversation to have.
It's a dance.
Even if you're in the specialty, right? And add on to that the fact that you do have a very individualized family difference, right? A family need. So, yeah, you're talking to a guy that doesn't have kids.
Well, the good news is that, Christian, you're in that department, so it completely makes sense that you would ask about what are their special needs the department look like, what does learning support look like at their school, and so you can kind of mask that for whatever reason you're asking is because that's going to be your job. And is that what you see yourself doing from this point on?
Yes. I mean, I would like to keep going. I don't know if we'll stay in grade 4, because I think you realize that you have bands that you really like of ages. And I'm realizing I'm more of an early childhood band, like maybe to grade 2. And so like hopefully getting back down at some point to that age. But I've been wanting to get into learning support for the last 6-7 years, because I was a special ed teacher in the States and I really enjoyed it a lot. But then when I went overseas, there wasn't that many opportunities at that time. for special education. And so I went back into like mainstream classroom, which was great. And I really enjoyed that. But then I spent the next couple of years like doing more PTs and like getting different certifications to get back into this role. My school had an opportunity and they were gracious enough to let me move. Yeah, I'm hoping to kind of stay in this as we move forward.
That's your wheelhouse.
That's
Yeah. Well, bless you, man. Every school I've been at that has special needs support, it takes a special kind of teacher, a special kind of person to deal with kids that need the extra support and a spectrum of different things going on. You have a lot of experience, it sounds like, from the past, and you carry that with you as a homeroom teacher or as a mainstream teacher. You'll carry that through. And I appreciate that. I see that. And I can only try to be that person that's had an inkling of what special needs is like, and carry that with me into the homeroom. But wow, I just have to say that, along with PE teachers and all pre-kinder male teachers, especially, God bless you all.
Well, what I love too about this role is like I really like being able to support like the team of teachers, you know, like I'm a big fan of like push-in model where you can go into the classroom and like really kind of like team teach or like offer the support. Cause like coming from a classroom, I know like it can be a lot trying to manage. Like, I mean, our school has 22 kids per class. I guess up to 24 in the older grades, but like trying to manage like that many different personalities and learning needs, like it could be very overwhelming for a teacher. And like having someone come in to like say like, I can make that for you, or like I can offer you this program and I'll set it up, you know, like not putting it all back on the homeroom teacher. Like that's really great. And like being able to like really make those partnerships is a big part of it.
But when you think about how many homerooms, like you said, you're grade 4, which is actually very specialized, isn't it? But then there might be 3 or 4 homeroom teachers that all need that support, and that you're only one person. You can't be divided into four classes. But that's the challenge.
It is a challenge. And that's been the challenge this year because like there are 8 grade 4 classes at my school. And it's just me as the grade 4 learning support teacher. That's been the challenge this year of how do we balance the kids who really need the support versus the kids who I can offer materials to the teachers in the classroom in order to kind of meet their needs where they are, or do a lot more of one-on-one support at different points of the day, just like math skill building or a quick literacy lesson. You know, I do a handwriting lesson in the morning with some children. And so it's like, yeah, finding those pockets. But it is a challenge. It's always a time challenge for sure. Because they talked about too, like Greg, you mentioned, it's a big kind of selling point for schools that can say they offer this or they need to have a certain level of support now. And it's true because there are more children coming into the international schools who have needs. Even if the needs are mild, like that's still extra things that they need to support them throughout the day. And because it is getting more competitive, like you said, JP Mint, like even Singapore, they keep talking about every year 2 or 3 more international schools pop up in Singapore. Like I think this now we're up to like 55 international schools in Singapore, which is a ton for a small island city-state, you know. And so the competition is getting very fierce, and so schools are having to accept children that they wouldn't have necessarily accepted like 8 years ago, you know, and are having to figure out how can we support them in the classroom because we need them to be in the school. And so now we have to be able to support them in the classes. And that's worldwide because they talked about our ability to diagnose is getting more sophisticated. We are noticing patterns of behavior much earlier. Parents are more open to having their students diagnosed and being assessed. And so there are a lot more needs, which on one hand is good because now we can offer more supports that children actually need instead of just being like, oh, like he's just having a hard time, you know. There's nothing wrong with him, but actually give them that support so they can be successful. But yeah, schools are having to kind of come to the front and being like, well, how can we change? What can we change in order to like accept this new population of students? And we're not only seeing that with like special needs, but we're seeing that too with language. You know, like there's a lot more students coming in with like language needs where like schools in the past like wouldn't have. They would have said like, well, you can't come here because you have to have a certain level of English. But now they're like, oh, no, please come. We'll add more supports for that. Like a good example of that is in Hong Kong. The school I was at in Hong Kong didn't even have EAL teachers.
Wow.
You had to speak perfect English to be accepted into the school. But now they're realizing like that doesn't work as much anymore. And so now they've opened up a like Chinese English track, Mandarin track, because they needed to keep their enrollment up. And so like things are always changing. It is more and more of a competition between the schools of like who can they keep and filling those seats.
We've seen a talk about the competition and stuff, and the I think the brunt of it happens especially at a school that's overwhelmed when they start bringing families in below the line of acceptance that they normally had in the past. Meaning, I have a student, they don't have any problems, they haven't been diagnosed. They get to school, and the teachers realize that there's something going on. They have a problem year, and then they have to plead with the parents to get them diagnosed or something. And if they agree, etc. I think one of the things I'll share is that our school, the school I'm currently at, 2 years ago, it was really tough because I noticed a trifecta. We had increased our ceiling of students in the classroom. We had gone up to like 26, and as opposed to like 20, and for different reasons, right? But among those students that were accepted and coming into the school, we had a lot of additional language students, language needs students that didn't even speak English as a first, a second language. And then we had social emotional and special needs coming in. So we had not only had language, we also had special needs, and we had
More
a ceiling go up.
students.
So imagine all three of those challenges at the same time. We weren't doing any of them correctly in my mind, but we worked it through, and things have changed. It was very dynamic, and we have gone a different direction. But it's interesting that you say that. Yeah, the schools that need to accept students, they're a business, and they start accepting students. And then, of course, you realize, wait a minute, we've let in a lot of students that have different needs that we're not prepared for. And then the parents start saying, why can't you help my student? What's wrong? Right?
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of that pressure falls onto the homeroom teacher who may or may not have the ability to handle the special needs in the class.
I worked at a school in Cambodia years back, 100 years ago. And I remember I was doing special needs part-time, and I was doing technology. It was an IB school. I had a role I had to take, and the art teacher did also. Both of us had special needs experience, as well as I had tech and she had art. So it sounds crazy, but it worked at some point. The only problem that we had was about half of the students that were sent to us for learning support, if you'd call it that, they weren't social emotional, and they weren't special needs. They were language. And it was crazy that all of a sudden we're both looking at each other going, this is a language issue. It's not social emotional. It's not something else. It's a language thing. And they're sending them to us instead of to a language teacher. We couldn't believe it. But that was a situation at that school at the time. It was growing, and it was expanding.
Which brings me to a question, Christian. The fact that we're talking about this, that what it was like before and then what it is like now, it's not like all of these special needs just started. They've always been there. But what has changed, in your opinion? What has changed that we are noticing it more?
Well, I think people are more educated now about it. Like we're in this technology age where like you're constantly seeing things on like TikTok and Instagram and things like that. And like that TikTok and Instagram can be a double-edged sword with this kind of stuff as well, with like fake news and like bad medicine choices and stuff. But it's also bringing to the forefront a lot of families with children with special needs who are like showing their lives and like being really real about like what they saw at the beginning and how they knew their child had these special needs. And I think like this education like is really helping a lot more families like kind of accept it a little bit more and are willing to like maybe take their child to a psychologist a little bit earlier or a developmental pediatrician. And so I think that's a big part of it, is because it is becoming more mainstream. It's not as like
it's
hidden
being
away.
Destigmatized.
Destigmatized is a great way to say it. Yes.
Hopefully.
And I think hopefully, yeah, in some places. But I also think that like the diagnostic criteria is becoming more specific, and like they're really able to like really look at like these are the markers or like these are the behaviors a lot more clearly now for different, I don't say disorders, but like different like neurodiversities. And so like things in the past that maybe wouldn't have been seen as like ADHD or autism. Like now they're like, oh, actually that is part of ADHD and autism. And they're seeing a lot more in adults as well. So a lot more adults are getting like diagnosed with ADHD because it is a lot more clear, like the symptoms of ADHD or the behaviors around it. And so I think that has also led to a larger amount of children being diagnosed with different neurodiversities over time.
And where do you think we're going? Do you think we are going to be expanding these departments, or do you think that homeroom teachers will now become more specialized and be able to handle a certain number of issues or needs in the classroom?
I think it will be more of a mix of that. I think international schools, especially because they're seeing that there is a demand more for it, which means that there is like families who want it. And so I think they will expand some of the programs. Like they probably won't go to like the high needs. Like a lot of the schools won't do that because that takes a lot more manpower and space and facilities to like
and one-on-one help in
and
some
one-on-one
cases.
help. Yeah. But like mild to moderate, I think we'll start seeing that more in international schools, like with like maybe larger learning support programs, like more services for the teachers. I think it's going to take time. I think it's not going to be a quick change, but maybe over the next decade, we'll start seeing a lot more of that. But I also think like UDL. So I don't know if you heard this phrase, like universal design for learning. That's also coming around a lot more, where it is kind of talking more about like, how can we support teachers in the classroom to like meet the needs of all students, and like not only like the mild needs, but also moderate needs. Like what supports can we give? What training can we give to teachers? And how can we build up their skills as well in the classroom so that it is more an inclusive environment? Because in the States, it's like they talk about the least restrictive environment. Like if a student can meet the needs of a math class, they would go to the mainstream math, may have to come out for like literacy or PE or things like that. And I think that's kind of the way that international schools are trying to move to more of like being more flexible in this way in terms of the services they can provide. And I think we'll start seeing like a mix of the two over time. Because right now, UDL is the big thing for schools, and they're doing a lot of training with the teachers. But again, that's going to take probably another 5-6 years as well to really get in the groove of that.
Well, if in my opinion, more schools are starting to have IEPs for students too, to follow through with input from the different teachers that the child sees, not just one learning support teacher or one learning support team. And that's something I've seen over the last 20 years is it changed over in different countries around the world, is that they're actually starting to have the information flow to go with the child, and not to be as a label, but how can we help? What are we noticing? And more eyes on. So I think that teamwork, and it's a lot of work for a teacher to have 3 or 4 IEPs in a room, but you can't get away from it, even in international schools now, because we have so many kids that need specific help in their own individualized
And deserve
plan.
international schools.
They
They
deserve it.
Deserve
Yes.
to be in the
Right.
classrooms. Yeah.
Also, like,
just to clarify, IEP for those non educators. I'm thinking my mom's listening. Individual education plans, where it's all sort of systemized what their needs are and what accommodations will do for them.
and my school has started that as well. And it's really good too for like specialist teachers, so that they can also see what the students that are coming to their class, because like they have so many students, so it's helpful for them.
Well,
to
like Greg with 600 students, yeah.
It's helpful for them to know like exactly what's happening with the different students in each class. But
Yeah,
like
we'll have meetings at the beginning of the year, and the specialists will sit down with the learning support, and we will go over it briefly. And these are some things to look out for, things that the big flags, things that we can help the student with, and reminders, and then we keep in touch with them that way.
Like Christian was saying, Singapore has 55 schools, so there's going to be some schools that can meet those needs. But I'm thinking about those one-off countries, one-off cities where there's like one international school. That's going to be that's going to be a break for any parents with kids with special needs, whether they're teachers or whether they're, NGO families and moving into a small country like that. It's going to be for them, they're going to have to consider maybe not moving to those places, I suppose.
I'm just going to tell him to get onto his Facebook group, because it sounds like that's the kind of information sharing that people need to have. They need to have information. It's the information age, but people need to know the right questions to ask and deal with what their needs are for their family. So I appreciate that completely. We could talk for another hour. You want to stay for another hour? Usually these are only an hour. We need to have you come back, but before we do close up
with your
here,
dad.
We have and with your dad. No, we do need to ask you two quick questions. You've heard us in the past, and we do want to ask.
Well, so I'm thinking the transition is kind of nice, where, you have certain needs, and then what are also 3 things that you need to make a place feel like home?
I was thinking about this. Yeah, I mean, I've moved, I think, 6, 7 times, being international, just different houses all the time.
That's the question, yeah.
But pictures. So I'm really big into art and pictures, and so I've collected them over the years overseas. And so usually when I move, the very first thing is I put up my art on my walls, and then I can feel a little bit more settled in my house. So definitely art is one of them. And this one's kind of more amorphous, but it's when I find a new place, I want to be able to walk to a breakfast or a cafe. So for a place to feel really like home for me, it has to be within walking distance to a breakfast place. So that's something I always look for when I move. And I think the other thing, I'd say
he's looking around. He's like, what else?
I think the other thing for me is there's I have one kind of centerpiece thing that was one of the first big things I bought overseas, which is this huge mirror made out of an old door. So it's but I bought that in Shanghai, and I think for me that was kind of I'm overseas now, I've made it, and so that's been the biggest thing I've moved every time that I've gone. And
you might be cursing that mirror someday. Yeah.
I know, I kind of found this little souvenir, this little rock for my
fridge magnets. I moved from artwork to fridge magnets when I had 54 frames, and I was moving 54 frames from place to place. I started to say, there's got to be a better way to do this. And I went to fridge magnets, because that is just, it's very heavy. They do become heavy, but they're much more compact. But I do love my artwork as well.
I'm deciding I'm going minimalist. My friends have things that I've collected overseas that I've brought home as gifts, and I think I'm going to keep doing that even more. So I have less in my suitcases.
Oh, so that'd be good, yeah.
Yeah, and I pass it on. Yeah, it's always there at my buddy's house. It's yours. I have one piece of artwork my friend Joe has had, and since I left the States, it's a piece of animation art. It's that frog that sings, "Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey."
Oh, right.
I'm dating myself on that one. But that cartoon, that cartoon was just one of my favorites, and I got an animation art of it from my past life, and he says that it's his now. And I'm like, of course it's yours now. On the wall. Listen, one other question we have is a police or customs story you'd like to share that you've experienced over the years. I'm sure you have a couple, or just give us one.
I was thinking about this before coming on. I don't really have any good police stories. The only kind of custom-y story I have was coming back into the US actually through immigration. I think after my first year in Shanghai, and this was when the US and China were not really getting along very well. And so the immigration officer was asking me well, why are you living in China? And I was like, I'm teaching there. And he's like, oh, there are no jobs you can teach here in the US.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, well, not that's going to pay my bills. So I was starting a little sniping back to him. He didn't really love that answer, but he stamped me through to come back into the country.
Wow.
So yeah, the only other kind of funny one was, it's not even about me, but I was flying. My mother lives in a very small, Midwest state, and her airport is tiny. And I remember when I was leaving one day to come back overseas, and the ticket booth guy was looking through my passport, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, you have so many stamps in here." I was like, "Man, I live overseas. I've done some traveling." He's like, "I've been nowhere." And then he stamped it and had me move on. I was like,
whoa.
Crabby people all over the place. What, they don't have any jobs here in the US? That's funny. Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. Well, Christian, do you have any final thoughts on what to say for families that are out there that are kind of disparaging, thinking, there's no place that we can find? What are some thoughts you can let them know?
And I would say, like we say in the group, is like, there are places for you to go, and there are schools that will be accepting of your family and can provide the services that you need for your child. It's going to be a longer road sometimes to find those positions, but like we say, like, you just need to find the one that's going to work for your family, and it is out there. Like, there are more and more schools every day that are offering it, and like, schools really are trying to be more inclusive in a lot of different ways. Keep the hope up, keep applying, and like, international life can be for your family as well. So yeah, it's out there.
Greg, final thoughts?
No, I just want Christian to come back on the show. We have more special needs to talk about, more learning support to talk about, single father. I can't imagine the interview process that you have. There's a lot of, there's a lot of questions, a lot of things that you need to have from a school, as well as what you give to a school. But thank you for coming on and talking about this. It's always difficult for me because I know that we can't reach every child and every need, but we can try, right, within our means.
Sure.
And so I'd like to thank Christian for calling us in from Singapore and bringing such a unique perspective on international teaching. I think Greg has pointed out we could talk for hours about this. And so we do hope you come back, and we'd love to meet your dad and see the dynamic there as well. I'd like to thank Greg, my co-host, who you can find in which room is it now, Greg?
Oh, I don't know. I think I'm in 108 still.
Well, in room 108. And I am Jacqueline from JP Mint Consulting. You can find me at jpmintconsulting.com. Thank you so much for joining this episode, everyone, and we'll see you next time.